Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Today I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break from my compulsory education rants, and I'm going to be going back to homeschooling. And the reason that I decided to do that today is because it's the end of the homeschool year for a lot of you. And I know there are some of you who do year-round homeschooling and don't take any sort of a break, but I think that most of you do take some sort of break at least. We actually take a 6-week hiatus. So our last day of school was this past Friday, and we'll be starting again the middle of July. But what you might hear a lot of people saying at this time of year who are getting ready to finish up that year of homeschool is that they had to maybe tack on an extra week to the end of their homeschool year because they weren't able to complete all of their lessons. Or they may say something like, our year is technically finished, but my kids are going to do extra work for an extra 5 days because they missed some lessons. Sometimes you might even hear parents saying that their kids are going to work through the summer because there were some lessons that were never completed. And today what I'm actually going to talk to you about is why we don't make up missed work in our homeschool. And I'm going to share with you just the really simple thing that we do instead. So first of all, I do want to point out that making up missed work is something that we really did do our first year of homeschooling. I was really diligent about it. Type A, box checker that I was, and still have tendencies to do. I used to really freak out if there was anything that we couldn't get completed that was on my lesson plan every day. And I would see to it that we had it done by the end of the week. And there are different techniques that we used. Sometimes I would double up on a lesson if they missed something. So there were days that my kids had to do school from like 10 to 5 that first year. It was pretty bad. There were also times that I made my kids do school on the weekends, Saturdays, and yes, sometimes even Sundays. I would make my kids do their schoolwork because there were lessons that we had missed that were not checked off, and that really bothered me. And I do know that I've never done this, but I know that there are other homeschoolers who will assign homework to their kids if they miss assignments or miss lessons. And that's not something that we do anymore, thankfully. We got over that my first year of homeschooling because I really did see how much joy it was taking from them in their learning and how stressed out it was making everybody. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about why that doesn't bother me at all anymore. Now, we just finished up our 9th year of homeschooling. And over this time, I have realized how much more children will learn throughout everyday life experiences than they will from any curriculum that you do with them. And I know that hurts a homeschool mom's heart to be able to admit that because, we spend a lot of time planning and choosing what our kids are going to do. We put a lot of effort into just helping them and supporting them and thinking of fun ways to present it to them. But honestly, when it comes down to it, that curriculum, that structured curriculum is not going to have nearly the impact that everyday life is going to have with them. And let's face it, what is the reason that school assignments are missed the most often? It's because there are things that are happening in life that are interfering with that. And I don't even mean interfering in a bad way. Because a lot of times those things that are happening are really beneficial. But what's happening is they're cutting into that school time, and it's making it hard to get all of those lessons completed. And so people look at them as missed assignments or missed lessons. But if you think about it, those things that are interrupting your homeschool day, they are things that your children are learning from. I think that we as a society have learned to box things, or I should say we put learning in a box. We look at things that would typically be learned in school. We think of that, as worthwhile learning. And then everything that would not be taught in school or not approached anyway in school, we kind of think of that as other, so there's learning, those schoolish things, and there's other. And then we tend to count those as not as important. And that is not the case at all. Kids learn from everything. It doesn't have to be something that's taught in a school or taught in a curriculum in order to be worthwhile. Because if you think about it, those things that they're learning in everyday life, or sometimes when they're out and about exploring on their own, these are things that they actually have a connection to. They are things that actually have meaning for them because they see actual real life ways to relate to them. And so, of course, there are going to be things that stick more with them. Whereas when you've got the curriculum, they might like it at first, but what are the odds, honestly, that those things are going to stick with them? Think back to your own school years. When I was in school, I was a good student. I graduated in the top 10% of my class, and I was gifted AP student. I was one of those model students. But admittedly, I will tell you now that I probably remember about 5% of what I learned in my high school years. Honestly, I think that's about it. I have learned more from homeschooling my kids than I did in my high school years. And that's because we have actually approached learning more holistically than they do in a school. And that is really the key. The key is understanding that learning is in everything. It's not just in that curriculum that you're giving to your kids to do every single day. So that's why it doesn't bother me. I don't consider assignments to be missed. What we do, if I do have something planned and it doesn't get done on a particular day, we just do it the next day. I don't freak out about it. I don't double up. We just move it to the next day. And it's really that simple because, again, when it comes down to it, what are your kids going to remember the most? And I know that a lot of you, like I used to be, you're box checkers. But maybe you should think about different sorts of things that you want to check boxes for. Maybe you could say, did we read today? Instead of saying, read chapter 2 of such and such a book, you could say, did we read today? Instead of saying, I want to complete lesson 4 of the science textbook today, you could say something like, was my child able to explore outside today? And it doesn't even have to be those sorts of things. But what I'm saying is to expand your mind and stop worrying about missing things, because your child is not missing out on anything if they are living a full life. And that attitude that we have about learning is something that really does come back from compulsory schooling. And I know I go back to that a lot. I talk about it a lot. But that's because that's really where we get our foundation in how we view learning. We look at the compulsory school experience. But think about before compulsory school was ever put in place. People were learning in everyday life. They were working together as a family. They were working together as communities. They were self-sustaining. They were able to support themselves and to grow their own food. And we had some geniuses in that time. We had Ben Franklin and we had Thomas Edison. We had Nikola Tesla. I could go on and on and on of a list of people who did not graduate from high school, who didn't even think about college, but they were brilliant. And it's because they had the opportunity to go out there and to follow their interests and to get their hands dirty doing things that really matter. So our view of what learning has to look like, looking at the curriculum and lessons and lesson plans and everything, that is something that was just formulated by the makers of compulsory education. And if you watched my other videos about compulsory education and what the true intentions are of it, you'll know that that doesn't necessarily mean that it was put in schools because it works. It doesn't work. Not at all. If anything, it does the opposite. So I am no longer interested in modeling our homeschool off of a school, a traditional school model, because I know that they don't work and I know why they were put in place. And I have seen the benefits of my kids learning in everyday life, the things that they are pursuing on their own and the things that they are picking up from the actual real life experiences that we have. So I know that there are some of you who will say something that like, what if none of our lessons ever get done? And I think that there are different answers that I could give you for that. First of all, you would have to look at, is it a character issue? Are the lessons not getting done because your kids are either intentionally forgetting them, or maybe they're not being responsible about it and they're being a little forgetful? Because then that is definitely something that you might want to work on with your kids. But I would say the vast majority of the reason that most people miss assignments is because life happens in the midst of homeschooling. And I say that all the time because I think it's something that you really do need to learn and accept, that life happens in the midst of homeschooling. And those things that happen in the midst of homeschooling that take you away from those school lessons are far more valuable than anything that they will ever read in a textbook. So just think about that. You also might want to reevaluate maybe your approach. So if you are a school at home family, or you're very structured and have a lot of things going on in your lesson plan, but yet you live very full lives and you're constantly going all the time, the two of those might not mix very well. And if you think about it, if you are one of those families who lives a very full, rich life outside of your schoolwork, that might be the optimal family to do unschooling, or to do a relaxed homeschool where the kids do a lot of self-directed learning. And it's really something that you need to read about, the different approaches, and just think about what works with your family. But that could also be an issue on missed lessons or missed work. Now, another thing might be the curriculum. I know that from experience, I know that if you've got a curriculum that you really do like and that your kids really do like, I think that you are going to make more of an effort to do your best to make sure that it gets done as much as possible. Whereas if you have a curriculum that you're really wishy-washy about and your kids don't find very interesting, you're not really going to put an effort into getting it done. So you might want to think about changing up the curriculum, doing something a little different that way. And the last thing that you might want to ask yourself when it comes to if the lessons are never getting completed is, what are your whys for homeschooling? What is the reason that you decided that you were going to keep your kids home and educate them? And if it's something that is important to you, you are going to see that your kids are learning each and every day. Now, does this mean that I think that you should go back and make sure that each of those lessons gets completed? No, absolutely not. What I'm saying is that as the parent, you need to decide how your kids learn best, what is going to best fit in your home. But again, don't ever worry about missing assignments, because there is learning in everyday life, and that is so important for people to understand. I think that was all that I wanted to talk to you about today. So I just really want to encourage you in that if your kids miss an assignment, it's not missed. It's just something that you can move to the next day. Not tack on to extra things, move it to the next day. And then the thing that you had planned for the next day, that can be done the following day. Don't ever worry about tacking on the work. Don't think that you have to give your kids homework if they miss assignments. And please don't make your kids do weekend school like I used to. Trust me, I think your kids will appreciate me saying that. But anyway, if you have any questions or comments, just leave one down below. I will answer as soon as I possibly can. It might take a bit because I've been extremely busy lately, but I will answer you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. I would also really appreciate it if you would share this video. And I hope you have a great day.